Landlords in California may soon no longer be able to charge tenants application fees. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of California. Obviously, they keep passing new anti-landlord laws in California. I mean, I don't think a week goes by where I don't see a city, a county, or the whole state which is trying to pass some new legislation that supposedly is going to help renters out, but really just is going to punish landlords. So the new bill that they just recently passed is supposedly is going to make it easier so that tenants don't have to pay so many application fees, right? And there's parts of it that I actually agree with, right? But the way that they are going to implement it will probably not be beneficial for landlords and end up hurting us in the end. That's why I'm against this sort of thing, okay? If landlords come up with their own solution to the problem, then that is a good thing. But we have to run our business. We need to have the ability to screen our tenants in the best way possible, and we have to do what's right for us first, okay? Now imagine if you told an employer, hey, as an employer, you have to accept this background investigation that this potential employee is just bringing you, and you can't do your own investigation. Well, I think a lot of employers would have their own issues with that as well. Well, when you're dealing with tenants, you're putting somebody into your property which costs you hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, and you want to make sure that, hey, this isn't, fake or BS or garbage, okay? Yes, there are people out there who will create fraudulent documents trying to give off the impression that they have a clean background, okay? Don't trust anyone. The way I see it is, yes, you have to trust people. I take that back. You can trust people, but I do the thing called trust but verify, okay? Trust but verify before I put a single tenant into any of my properties. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think, okay? What do you think of a tenant being able to use the same background investigation for multiple different landlords, okay? So basically, in this, what they're describing in California is the tenant goes, they pay for this background investigation, right? And I believe it's good for a month, and then they're able to take that and take it over to, if they want to apply for 10 different apartments, they can use that same investigation. Like I said, sounds good, but there are issues with it, and that's why I'm against it, okay? Anyway, let's get into this article. It's coming from mercurynews.com, and it says, California Senate approves bill allowing reusable reports for rental applicants. Assembly Bill 2559 seeks to spare renters the cost of paying over and over again for credit checks and background screening when searching for a new home. So, the implication, of course, in a lot of these cases is that landlords are charging these application fees because they're just pocketing the money, okay? They are greedy. They want to pocket all them application fees, and no, okay? We are using that money to pay for tenant screening, okay? We have to spend money every time that we get a tenant applicant in there that we're trying to thoroughly investigate before we put them into our property. And the cost isn't just for eviction screening, for criminal history, and for credit. Okay, there's other costs as well, because when I screen tenants, at least, I like to call up their employer. Okay, make sure that the person actually works there. Make sure that the person actually is there. I like to call up their former landlords and make sure that that person was a good tenant to their former landlords. Because if the previous person where this tenant used to live tells me, hey, this person never pays on time, this person still owes me money, well, guess what? I don't want to rent to that person, okay? So yeah, there are other things, other people you have to call, other things you have to check out if you're doing a good investigation of this tenant to make sure that they are a good fit for your property. Now, you can't charge for that under these new California rules if you accept that general application. But let's get into the article, because they describe exactly what the law says better than I can right now. The California Senate voted overwhelmingly Monday, August 22nd, to support a bill allowing renters to purchase their own reusable credit reports and submit them to multiple landlords rather than paying over and over for a credit check when applying to lease an apartment or home. However, the Senate amended the bill in June, making it optional for landlords to accept a renter's tenant screening report, said Mike Blount, chief of staff for the bill's author, Assembly member Christopher Ward, Democrat from San Diego. The bill now goes back to the Assembly for concurrence on the Senate amendment. Under the Senate version, landlords would still have the right to order credit and background checks from their own provider, charging an application fee to cover those costs. Landlords who accept the tenant's reusable report won't be able to charge any application fees. So yeah, that's an interesting amendment that they made there, okay? And I'm pretty sure that came from, probably more landlord-friendly person who was, in the legislature, okay? So yeah, they basically said, hey, it's optional if the landlord wants to take it. Now, they might strip that provision out, and I know that they are going to try to strip it out. It might get stripped out before this becomes a law, right? But I think it is a good thing to give landlords the option of taking it. Now, if things are easier, right, for the landlord and they're able to verify that, hey, this is a good background investigation, then yes, I agree that, hey, this is a good idea. It would actually save us time if we had the tenants bring to us their background. Here's my print off. Here's my credit. Here's my background, and here's my eviction record right here. If a tenant could bring that to me, it would save us time. Okay, we could easily screen them, but I'd have to be able to verify that, hey, this document is for real. This document isn't a fake, and this information is real. Okay. And if they just allow the tenant to just bring some, printout or email me or something that unverifiable, then it's not going to do me any good. So I need the option of, if I'm being super paranoid, hey, I want to check your background on my own. Okay? So that's my personal opinion. Give the landlord the option to do what they want. Do not mandate from the government what the landlord has to do with their property. And that's all I ever ask. Whenever I bring up any of these articles, I'm like, hey, let us run our businesses. You stay out of our businesses. Government, stay out of our business. The Assembly has until the end of August, when the current legislative session ends, to accept the Senate amendment. Ward said he sponsored the bill to rein in rental search costs. With apartment vacancies at a 22-year low, renters must apply over and over again in their search for a new home, costing hundreds of dollars in application fees, he said. Sometimes there can be 30 or more applicants for one unit, Ward said. You have to go around and apply to 10 to 12 units to try to get lucky and be able to secure the right to lease that unit. And what this really comes down to, right? And the reason that people have to apply for 10 to 12 units is because there's a shortage of housing, especially in a place like California, okay? You have a shortage of housing, you have a lot of people who are looking for housing, and the result is that you end up paying, 10 or 12 application fees before you're able to find a single place where you can live. So the real solution to this is to build more housing, okay, or allow more housing to be built. They have to get rid of government regulation in order for that to happen in California, and we know that's not going to happen. The only thing I've seen out of California ever since I started making these videos is more regulation, not less, okay? Under Assembly Bill 2559, renters can order their own tenant screening report that includes a credit check, employment verification, and 7-year eviction history. To ensure the report is current, it will only be good for 30 days, and to ensure it's tamper-free, the landlord could access it directly from a third-party provider. Yeah, and I like that right there. Like if the tenant orders their credit report through, let's say, TransUnion, like because I used TransUnion Smart Move to do a lot of my tenant screening. Well, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to log into TransUnion, look at the credit report the credit report, the background investigation, and the eviction information for that tenant, that they just had run for another landlord, for up to 30 days, because not much is going to change in 30 days. Okay, so yeah, I agree with that. That sounds like a great idea. Okay, and honestly, I am surprised because we don't need the government to tell us to do this, right? TransUnion itself should have been the one doing this, but we know why they didn't. Okay, because they make so much money off of tenant screening that they want the tenant to have to pay all those application fees. The person making the money is not the landlord in this case. It is these tenant screening companies, okay? And they want as many tenants to be screened as many times as possible. So yeah, they're going to make it as difficult as possible for the tenant to share that information between multiple landlords, because then they only get to charge the tenant one time instead of the 10 or 12 times that they were charging them before. So yeah, stop blaming the landlord for this problem and then look at the real culprit behind it. Now, obviously, right, they are a private company, and I'm a strong believer in doing business, doing things legally, etc. Right? So they're operating within the law. There's nothing wrong with what they're doing, but I do see efficiencies that could be created, and I think that they should make this easier for the landlords and the tenants. We're the ones who are really, involved in this process, and not the tenant screening company. The tenant screening company, can figure out something else, in my opinion. But that's another issue. Most landlords now require background checks to make sure they're leasing their properties to a reliable renter with a reputation for paying bills on time and who doesn't have a criminal history or past bankruptcies. The fees often are charged up front as a condition for applying for a rental. California law caps rental application and tenant screening fees at $55.58, an amount that increases annually based on inflation. But landlords are allowed to charge enough to cover their reasonable time and actual costs for performing background checks. Tenants are entitled to a copy of the screening and credit report and are entitled to a refund for any amount paid over the landlord's actual costs. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think TransUnion Smart Move was charging like $40 for a single tenant screening. Of course, like I said, there are other costs that a property manager or a landlord is going to have. Calling up all their former employers, etc. So yeah, that seems like a reasonable amount, but I don't like the fact that it's capped either at the same time. So yeah. I don't like this law. I don't like that they're putting it in place. I think that landlords could eventually get really badly burned by this sort of thing. If there was a way to implement this without having the government involved, I'd probably be a little bit more happy about it.